As the rain taps gently against the window, a quiet settles over the world outside. It's a sound that soothes, yet beneath it lies an invitation to peer into the shadows of the past, where stories of tragedy, betrayal, and unrelenting pursuit of justice wait to be told. Welcome to Shadows of the Past, where we unravel the darkest corners of human nature. Not to shock, but to understand. Tonight in Volume 19, we bring you 9 true crime stories, each a haunting reminder that evil can wear the face of the ordinary, lurking in places we least expect. From a Kansas parking lot where a young woman's life was stolen to the sunlit beaches of Australia where a family's dream turned to nightmare, these tales will pull you into a world of suspense and sorrow. Narrated against the backdrop of rain at a black screen, they're crafted to draw you in, to hold you on the edge of sleep, while stirring the mind with questions that linger long after the story ends. Who are these perpetrators, cloaked in normalcy, and what drives them to cross the line in the darkness? How do the ripples of their crimes reshape the lives left behind? Lie back, let the rain carry you, and prepare to journey through the chilling realities of crime. Our first story begins in a place where safety was taken for granted, where a single moment changed everything. This is the story of Kelsey Smith, a young woman whose light was extinguished, but whose legacy burns on. Part 1, The Abduction of Kelsey Smith. In the soft glow of a Kansas evening where the hum of cicadas blends with the distant rumble of traffic, Overland Park felt like a haven. It was June 2, 2007, and the suburban streets stretched out in orderly rows, their neat lawns and tidy homes a testament to the American dream. Families gathered for dinner, children played in backyards, and the world seemed to turn with reassuring predictability. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a predator was watching, waiting for his moment to shatter the illusion of safety. That night, 18-year-old Kelsey Smith would step into his path, and nothing would ever be the same. Kelsey was the kind of girl who lit up a room without trying. With her bright blonde hair and infectious smile, she carried a warmth that drew people to her. She just graduated from Shawnee Mission South High School, her tassel still swaying from the rearview mirror of her car. At 18, her life was a canvas of possibility, college plans, dreams of travel, and a heart full of love for her family and friends. She was the youngest of Greg and Mizzy Smith children, a daughter who balanced a sharp wit with a gentle kindness. That evening, she had a simple mission: drive to the Target store on 97th Street to buy a gift for her boyfriend, Daniel. It was their 6-month anniversary, a milestone that felt monumental in the tender haze of young love. Kelsey pulled into the Target parking lot just before 7 p.m., her silver Ford Contour blending into the sea of cars. Inside, she moved through the aisles with purpose, picking out a small token of affection. A card, perhaps, or a thoughtful trinket. Surveillance cameras captured her every move, her casual stride betraying no hint of the danger lurking outside. She paid at the register, her smile flashing briefly at the cashier, and stepped back into the evening air. The clock read 7:05 p.m. It was the last time Kelsey Smith would be seen alive by anyone other than her killer. As she approached her car, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was tall, unassuming, his movements calculated but cloaked in the ordinariness of a man running errands. He'd been watching her, his eyes tracking her through the store, his mind already set on what would come next. In a matter of seconds, the encounter turned violent. Kelsey fought, her instincts kicking in as she struggled against his grip, but he was stronger. He forced her into her car, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoed in the empty lot. The vehicle sped off, swallowed by the twilight, leaving behind only questions and a growing dread. Back at home, the Smiths' family began to worry. Kelsey was punctual, reliable, the kind of daughter who always checked in. Her phone rang unanswered, each unanswered call tightening the knot in her parents' chests. By 9 p.m., they were calling her friends, hoping for a simple explanation, a forgotten plan, a dead battery, but no one had seen her. Greg and Missy drove to the Target, their hearts pounding as they scanned the parking lot. Kelsey's car was gone. Panic set in and they called the Overland Park police. Something was terribly wrong. The police moved quickly, pulling surveillance footage from the store. What they saw turned their blood cold. At 7:08 p.m., the cameras had captured the man, a grainy figure, his face partially obscured, but his intent unmistakable. He lingered near the entrance, his posture tense. His eyes locked on Kelsey as she exited. The footage showed the brief struggle, her car pulling away moments later. The police had a suspect, but no name. They had a timeline, but no location. And they had Kelsey's phone, a faint lifeline. that could lead them to her. If only they could access it. The call went out to Verizon, Kelsey's phone carrier. The police pleaded for real-time tracking data, knowing every second could mean the difference between life and death. But Verizon hesitated, citing privacy laws. Hours ticked by, each one a torment for the Smiths, who sat huddled in their living room, surrounded by family and friends. The community rallied, volunteers distributing flyers with Kelsey's photo, her bright eyes and warm smile, now a haunting reminder of what was at stake. Missing posters blanketed the city, and news stations broadcast her story, urging anyone with information to come forward. Behind the scenes, the investigation was a race against time. The police combed through the footage, analyzing every frame for clues. They noticed something else. A second set of cameras from a nearby Macy's had captured the suspect earlier that evening. He was seen pacing the parking lot, his movements erratic, as if scouting his prey. The images were blurry, but they gave the police a starting point. They cross-referenced the footage with other reports, looking for patterns, for anything that might point to a name. On June 6, 4 agonizing days after Kelsey's disappearance, a tip came in. A hiker near Longview Lake, a remote area in Missouri, had spotted something unusual among the tall grass. Police descended on the scene, their hearts heavy with dread. There, hidden in the underbrush, they found her. Kelsey Smith, the girl with the radiant smile, lay lifeless, her body bearing the marks of a brutal attack. And the autopsy would later reveal the grim details. She'd been strangled, her body bruised from her desperate fight for survival. The discovery shattered the Smith family, their worst fears now a devastating reality. But for the police, it was a call to action. They had a body, a crime scene, and a mission to find the man responsible. The investigation zeroed in on Edwin Roy Hall, a 26-year-old man who lived not far from the Target store. Hall was an enigma, a man who wore the mask of normalcy with chilling ease. To his wife, Christy, and their young son, he was a provider, a quiet man who kept to himself. But beneath the surface lay a darker story. Hall's childhood was a patchwork of pain. Born to a teenage mother, he was shuffled through foster homes, his early years marked by neglect and abuse. By his teens, he was already in trouble, arrested for assault and theft, his anger simmering just below the surface. Yet, he'd managed to build a life that seemed unremarkable. A job, a family, a home in the suburbs. It was the perfect cover for a predator. The police had their suspicions, but they needed evidence. They pulled Hall in for questioning, his demeanor calm, almost detached. He claimed he was home the night Kelsey disappeared, his wife backing his story. But the cracks in his alibi began to show. A fingerprint found on Kelsey's seatbelts matched his, a silent accusation that he couldn't explain away. Fibers from his car were found on her clothing, and a search of his vehicle turned up traces of her DNA. The noose was tightening, but Hall remained defiant, his lies unraveling with each new piece of evidence. The surveillance footage was the final nail in his coffin. Cameras from a nearby store showed Hall lurking in the parking lot. Hours before the abduction, his face now clear enough to identify, he was seen trailing Kelsey through the aisles, his eyes fixed on her with the predator's focus. The police pieced together his movements. He'd followed her from the store, waited for her to emerge, and struck when she was alone. It was a calculated act, one that spoke to a mind capable of chilling precision. Paul's arrest sent shockwaves through Overland Park. Neighbors struggled to reconcile the man they knew, a quiet father, a man who mowed his lawn and waved politely, with the monster described in the police reports. His wife, Christy, was devastated, insisting she'd seen no signs of his darkness. But the evidence was undeniable, and in 2008, Hall faced trial for kidnapping, rape, and murder. The courtroom was a crucible of grief. Kelsey's family sitting in stoic silence as prosecutors laid out the case. They described how Hall had stalked her, how he'd driven her to Longview Lake, where he ended her life in a final act of cruelty. The jury deliberated for mere hours before returning a verdict, guilty on all counts. Edwin Hall was sentenced to life without parole, 27 counts, and assured he would never walk free. The judge's words were a somber epitaph for Kelsey, a life cut short, a future stolen. For the Smiths, the verdict was a hollow victory. No sentence could bring their daughter back, no punishment could erase the pain. Greg and Missy channeled their grief into advocacy, fighting for a law that would prevent other families from enduring the same delays they had faced. The Kelsey Smith Act, passed in Kansas in 2009, mandated that telecom companies provide phone data in emergencies, a change that has since saved countless lives. By 2025, 29 states had adopted similar laws, each one a testament to Kelsey's enduring legacy. But as the rain falls outside, washing over the quiet streets of Overland Park, the questions remain. What drives a man like Edwin Hall to commit such an act? Was it the scars of his childhood, the rage that festered in silence, or something deeper, something unknowable? The psychology of a predator is a labyrinth, its paths twisting and elusive. Hall's crime was not a spur-of-the-moment act, but a calculated descent into darkness, one that left a community forever changed. Kelsey Smith was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman whose light shone brightly even in her final moments. Her story is a reminder that evil can hide in the most ordinary places, wearing the face of a neighbor, a stranger, a man passing by in a parking lot. It's a warning to hold our loved ones close, to cherish the moments we have, because the world can shift in an instant. And as we drift into the stillness of the night, Kelsey's memory lingers. A beacon of resilience, a call to never stop fighting for those we've lost. Part 2, the murder of Irene Cortez. The sun sets slowly over Barranquilla, Colombia, its golden rays painting the vibrant streets with a deceptive calm. It's March 2, 2011, and the city pulses with life. Music spills from open windows, vendors hawk their wares, and the warm Caribbean breeze carries the scent of salt and spice. In this bustling coastal metropolis, where joy and hardship coexist, a woman named Irene Cortez steps into a bar, her laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. She's here on vacation, a chance to escape the routine of her life in Spain, but tonight, in the heart of this lively city, a tragedy is brewing. One that will leave her family grasping for answers and a community shrouded in suspicion. Irene Cortez was a woman who embraced life with open arms. At 42, she carried the warmth of her Spanish roots, her dark eyes sparkling with a zest for adventure. A mother of two, she'd built a stable life in Madrid, balancing her career as a bank clerk with the demands of raising her sons. Her first marriage had ended in divorce, a chapter closed with resilience. And now she was married to Farid Genesouris, a charismatic Colombian man she'd met during a trip to South America. Their love story was one of passion and spontaneity, a whirlwind romance that led to a second chance at happiness. This trip to Barranquilla was meant to be a celebration, a reunion with Farid's family, a chance to soak in the culture that had drawn them together. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming, invisible to all but those closest to her. That evening, Irene and Farid arrived at a popular bar in the city's north end, a place known for its salsa music and lively crowds. Irene was in her element, her smile infectious, as she sipped a drink and chatted with Farid's friends. To onlookers, they seemed like any couple on vacation, relaxed, carefree, lost in the moment. But as the night wore on, something shifted. Witnesses later recalled a tension in Farid's posture, a fleeting hardness in his eye. Around 11 p.m., two young men entered the bar, their presence unremarkable at first. They ordered drinks, blending into the crowd, but their eyes kept drifting toward Irene. What happened next would unravel in a blur of chaos and violence. At 11:47 p.m., a commotion erupted near the bar's entrance. Witnesses heard shouts, then screams, as the two men, later identified as Brian Dario and Juan Carlos, sprang into action. They brandished knives, their movement swift and deliberate. In the confusion, Irene was their target. She was stabbed multiple times, her body collapsing to the floor as panic swept through the bar. Farid, standing nearby, appeared frozen, his reaction strangely subdued. The attackers fled into the night, leaving Irene bleeding out on the tiled floor. Paramedics arrived too late. Irene Cortez was pronounced dead at the scene, her vibrant life extinguished in a matter of minutes. The Barranquilla police descended on the bar, cordoning off the area as shocked patrons gave their statements. The initial theory was a robbery gone wrong. Irene's purse was missing, and the attackers had reportedly demanded money. But something didn't add up. The precision of the attack, the way the men zeroed in on Irene, suggested a motive beyond petty theft. Her family in Spain, devastated by the news, refused to accept the robbery narrative. Irene's sister, Maria, was adamant. She wasn't the type to flaunt wealth. This wasn't random. Someone wanted her dead. The question was who and why. The investigation took a sharp turn when police reviewed the bar's security footage. The grainy images showed Brian Dario and Juan Carlos entering the bar, their faces partially obscured by caps. They lingered near the counter, exchanging glances with a third figure, a man who, to the investigator's shock, bore a striking resemblance to Fareed. The footage captured a brief interaction. A subtle nod before the men moved toward Irene. It was enough to raise suspicion, but not enough to prove intent. Fareed, questioned the next day, was composed, almost rehearsed. He claimed he'd been as shocked as anyone, insisting the attackers were strangers. "I tried to help her," he said, his voice steady. "I loved Irene. Why would I hurt her?" But his story had holes, and the police were determined to find them. Brian Dario and Juan Carlos were arrested within 48 hours, tracked down through tips from witnesses who recognized them from the footage. Under interrogation, they confessed to the murder, admitting they'd been paid to kill Irene. The amount? A meager 2 million pesos, roughly $1,000, 0 cents. Their confession pointed to a middleman, a shadowy figure, who'd arranged the hit, but they refused to name him, their fear palpable. The police pressed harder, suspecting Fareed's involvement, but the trail grew cold. The middleman, whoever he was, had covered his tracks, and Fareed's alibi, backed by his family, held firm. Irene's family flew to Colombia, their grief laced with fury. They demanded answers, pointing to inconsistencies in Fareed's behavior. Before the trip, Irene had confided in her sister about tensions in their marriage. Fareed had been distant, his temper flaring over small things. There were rumors of infidelity, whispers that Irene had discovered something, perhaps an affair, perhaps something darker. Maria recalled a chilling detail. Just before the trip, 3,000 euro, 0 cents, had vanished from their joint account. Fareed claimed it was for travel expenses, but Irene wasn't convinced. "She told me she didn't trust him," Maria said. She was planning to confront him. The police dug deeper, uncovering more red flags. Fareed's financial records showed unusual transactions in the weeks leading up to the murder. Small payments to unknown accounts, withdrawals that didn't align with their travel plans. A witness, a bartender who'd served Fareed that night, reported overhearing him mention taking care of a problem. It was circumstantial, maddeningly so, but it painted a picture of a man with secrets. The theory emerged that Fareed had orchestrated the hit, hiring Dario and Carlos to eliminate Irene for reasons only he knew. Was it money? Revenge? A desire to erase a marriage that had soured? The answers remained just out of reach. The trial of Brian Dario and Juan Carlos was swift and somber. In 2012, Dario was sentenced to 23 years for murder, Carlos to 17 years as an accomplice. They maintained their silence about the mastermind, their sentences a heavy price for their loyalty or fear. Fareed, meanwhile, walked free. The lack of concrete evidence, no direct link to the payment, no confession from the killers, left the police with nothing but suspicions. He returned to Spain, but Irene's family ensured he faced consequences of another kind. They blocked him from custody of Irene's sons and excluded him from her estate, leaving him with nothing but the weight of their accusations. Back in Barranquilla, the case became a local legend, a cautionary tale whispered in bars and markets. The city, so full of life, had borne witness to a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Irene's family continued their fight, hiring private investigators to uncover the truth, but the years passed with no new leads. Fareed vanished from the public eye, his whereabouts a mystery. Some say he returned to Colombia, others that he fled to Europe, living under a new name. Wherever he is, the shadow of Irene's death follows him, a ghost he cannot outrun. The rain falls harder now, its rhythm a somber backdrop to a story that refuses to resolve. Irene Cortez was a woman who loved fiercely, who sought joy in the world's beauty, only to be betrayed in the cruelest way. Her murder raises questions that linger like the humid air of Barranquilla. How well do we know those we love? What secrets hide behind a familiar smile? The police files on Irene's case remain open, a silent plea for closure that may never come. Her family holds on to her memory, their love for her a light that no darkness can extinguish. But as we drift deeper into the night, the mystery of Fareed Genasuris looms large. Was he the architect of this tragedy, a man who traded his wife's life for his own gain? Or was he simply a bystander caught in a web of circumstance? The truth, like the rain, slips through our fingers, leaving only echoes of a life lost too soon. Irene's story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers come not from strangers, but from those we hold closest, those who know exactly how to break us. Part 3, the murder of Sarai Sierra. In the ancient city of Istanbul, where the Bosphorus whispers tales of empires and the call to prayer echoes through narrow streets, a young woman chased her dreams under the winter sky. It was January 2013, and Sarai Sierra, a 33-year-old American photographer, wandered the cobblestone alleys, her camera capturing the soul of a city that straddles 2 continents. She was alone, her first solo trip abroad, a bold step to nurture her passion for art and adventure. But beneath the vibrant tapestry of Istanbul's markets and minarets, a darkness waited, a predator cloaked in the chaos of the city, ready to steal her light forever. Sarai Sierra was a woman who saw beauty in the ordinary. A mother of 2 from Staten Island, New York, she balanced the demands of family life with a restless creative spirit. Her days were filled with the laughter of her sons, Zion and Silas, and the steady presence of her husband, Stephen. But photography was her escape, her way of freezing moments that others might overlook. A child's smile, a weathered door, the play of light on water. At 33, she was ready to push her boundaries, to test her courage. When the chance came to travel to Istanbul, she seized it, despite her family's quiet concerns. "I'll be fine," she told them, her eyes bright with determination. "This is my dream." Sarai arrived in Istanbul on January 7, 2013, her itinerary a blend of tourist landmarks and hidden gems. She stayed in a modest Airbnb in the Beyoğlu district, a vibrant area known for its bohemian charm and bustling nightlife. Her days were spent exploring Hagia Sophia's soaring domes, the colorful stalls of the Grand Bazaar, the ancient walls of Sarayburnü. She shared her journey through Instagram, posting photos of mosques and street scenes, her captions brimming with awe. To her followers, she was living a fairy tale, a woman embracing the world on her terms. But behind the curated images, Sarai was navigating the challenges of solo travel, language barriers, unfamiliar customs, and the subtle unease of being a foreigner in a sprawling city. On January 21, the day she was set to fly home, Sarai vanished. Her last known communication was a Skype call with Stephen, her voice cheerful as she described her final plans. A visit to the Galata Bridge, a few more photos before heading to the airport. She promised to call again before her flight. That call never came. Stephen, back in New York, felt a growing unease as hours passed without word. Sarai's phone went straight to voicemail, her social media silent. By January 22, he contacted the U.S. Embassy, his voice trembling with fear. Something was wrong. Sarai wasn't the type to disappear. The Istanbul police launched a missing persons investigation, their efforts hampered by the city's vastness and Sarai's status as a tourist. They traced her last known movements through her Airbnb host, who reported seeing her leave the apartment around noon on January 21. Surveillance footage from the Galata Bridge showed her walking alone, her camera slung over her shoulder, her scarf fluttering in the winter breeze. She appeared untroubled, her stride confident, but after 2 p.m. the trail went cold. Her phone's signal had stopped transmitting and her credit cards showed no activity. The police issued a public appeal, Sarai's photo, a smiling woman with warm brown eyes, plastered across Turkish news outlets. In New York, Stephen and Sarai's family clung to hope, their living room a makeshift command center. Friends and neighbors rallied, raising funds to send Stephen and Sarai's brother David to Istanbul. The media seized the story, painting Sarai as the all-American mom lost in a foreign land, a narrative that both amplified the search and stirred controversy. Some questioned her decision to travel alone. Whispers of recklessness that stung her family. She was chasing her passion, Stephen said, his voice breaking. She didn't deserve this. As days turned to weeks, the investigation deepened. Turkish police combed through Sarai's digital footprint, uncovering a series of messages that raised eyebrows. Sarai had been in contact with a man named Taylan, a local she'd met through Instagram. Their exchanges were friendly, centered on photography and Istanbul's art scene. They'd met briefly during her trip, sharing coffee near Taksim Square. Taylan, a 30-something graphic designer, was cooperative, providing an alibi backed by co-workers. But the police weren't convinced, their suspicions fueled by cultural biases about a foreign woman meeting a local man. They detained him, only to release him days later when no evidence linked him to her disappearance. The breakthrough came on February 2, 12 days after Sarai's vanished. A group of teenagers exploring the crumbling walls of Sarai Bernu, a historic site near the Sea of Marmara, stumbled across a grim discovery. Hidden beneath a pile of debris, wrapped in a tattered blanket, was a woman's body. The police arrived, their faces grim as they confirmed the worst. It was Sarai Sierra. Her body bore the marks of a violent struggle, blunt force trauma to the head, bruises on her arms, and signs of sexual assault. A rock stained with blood lay nearby, the likely murder weapon. The autopsy revealed she'd been killed shortly after her disappearance. Her life ended in a brutal act of rage. The discovery sent shockwaves across 2 continents. In Istanbul, the police faced mounting pressure to find the killer, their reputation on the line. In New York, Sarai's family grappled with unimaginable grief, their hope replaced by a burning need for justice. The crime scene yielded critical clues: a strand of hair, a partial fingerprint, and DNA under Sarai's fingernails, suggesting she'd fought back. The police canvassed the area, a known haunt for vagrants and petty criminals, hoping for a witness. Their efforts led them to Talal Salih, a 46-year-old homeless man who scavenged paper near Sarah Bernu. Salih was no stranger to the police, a drifter with a history of theft and assault. He lived on the margins of Istanbul's underbelly, his life a cycle of survival and desperation. When officers brought him in, he was disheveled, his eyes darting nervously. Under questioning, he denied knowing Sarai, claiming he'd been elsewhere on January 21. But the evidence told a different story. The DNA under Sarai's nails matched his, and the hair found at the scene was his as well. A search of his meager belongings turned up a chilling trophy: Sarai's phone. Its screen cracked, but still intact. Faced with the mounting evidence, Salih's defiance crumbled. In a halting confession, he painted a picture of a crime born of opportunity and impulse. He'd seen Sarai near the Sarai Bernu walls, her camera and backpack marking her as a tourist. He approached her, demanding money, but she resisted, her voice sharp with defiance. Enraged, he attacked, striking her with the rock and dragging her body to a secluded spot. The assault that followed was a final act of cruelty, one that spoke to a man unbound by conscience. Salih showed no remorse, his words cold and detached, as if recounting a mundane errand. The police reconstructed the timeline. Sarai had likely wandered to Salih Bernu after visiting the Galata Bridge, her photographer's eye drawn to the historic ruins. Salih, scavenging nearby, saw his chance. The attack was swift, the isolation of the area ensuring no witnesses. He hid her body under debris, taking her phone and camera to sell later. The randomness of the crime was its own kind of horror. A woman in the wrong place at the wrong time, crossing paths with a man who saw her as nothing more than prey. Salih's trial began in late 2013, a high-profile case that drew international scrutiny. Turkish prosecutors presented a meticulous case, the DNA evidence irrefutable. Sarai's family, unable to attend, followed the proceedings through their lawyer, their grief compounded by the distance. The courtroom was tense, Salih's stoic demeanor a stark contrast to the emotional testimony of those who knew Sarai. Her photographs, displayed as evidence, were a haunting reminder of her talent. A gallery of Istanbul's beauty, now forever tied to her loss. In early 2014, Salih was convicted of murder, robbery, and sexual assault, sentenced to life in prison without parole. The judge's words were a solemn vow: "You will never harm again." For Sarai's family, the verdict was a bittersweet milestone. Justice had been served, but it couldn't fill the void she left behind. Stephen struggled to explain her absence to their sons, who asked for their mother in quiet moments. Sarai's parents, Marilyn Dennis, channeled their pain into a memorial website, selling her photographs to fund education for orphaned children. She saw the world through a lens of hope, Marilyn said. We want her legacy to reflect that. The site became a digital shrine, a place where Sarai's spirit lived on through her art. In Istanbul, the case left a lasting mark. Sarai Bernu, once a picturesque ruin, became a place of whispered warnings, a reminder of the city's hidden dangers. The police tightened security in tourist areas, and locals debated the safety of solo travelers, particularly women. Sari's story sparked global conversations about travel and vulnerability. Her name, a cautionary tale for some, a symbol of courage for others. She'd ventured into the world alone, unafraid, only to meet a fate no one could predict. As the rain falls softly outside, its cadence a mournful lullaby, Sarai Sierra's story lingers like a half-remembered dream. What drove Talal Salih to such brutality? Was it the desperation of a life on the fringes, or a deeper, more primal urge to dominate? The psychology of a man like Salih is a shadowed maze, its paths leading to no clear answers. His crime was not planned, but opportunistic, a collision of chance and cruelty that stole a woman's future. Sarai fought, her nails clawing at her attacker, a final act of defiance that ensured he'd be caught. But Sarai was more than her final moments. She was a dreamer, a mother, an artist who saw the world's beauty and sought to share it. Her photographs, frozen in time, are a testament to her vision, a glimpse of Istanbul through her eyes, vibrant and alive. Her story is a reminder that the world, for all its wonders, holds dangers that can strike without warning. It's a call to cherish the moments we have, to hold tight to those we love, because the line between adventure and tragedy is razor thin. As we drift deeper into the night, the rain carries Sarai's memory, her courage a beacon in the darkness. Istanbul, with its ancient walls and endless stories, keeps her secret, a city that gave her both inspiration and sorrow. And somewhere, in the quiet of a New York home, her sons grow up with her photographs on the walls, a silent promise that their mother's light will never fade. Part 4, The Angel of Death, Donald Harvey. In the sterile corridors of America's hospitals, where the hum of machines and the shuffle of nurses' shoes create a rhythm of healing, a monster walked unnoticed. It was the 1970S and 1980S. A time when trust in medical professionals was absolute, when patients placed their lives in the hands of those sworn to protect them. But in the small towns of Ohio and Kentucky, one man betrayed that trust in the most unimaginable way. His name was Donald Harvey, and he called himself an angel of death. For nearly 2 decades, he moved through hospital wards, his quiet demeanor hiding a chilling truth. He was a killer, and his victims numbered in the dozen. Donald Harvey was an enigma, a man who blended into the background with chilling ease. Born in 1952 in Butler County, Ohio, his early life was a tapestry of hardship. Raised in a fractured family, he endured abuse and neglect, his childhood marked by the kind of pain that leaves scars no one can see. By his teens, he was withdrawn, his emotions locked behind a stoic facade. Yet, he found solace in structure, excelling in school and gravitating toward a career in health. As at 18, he became an orderly at Marymount Hospital in London, Kentucky, his slight frame and soft-spoken manner earning him the trust of colleagues and patients alike. To those who knew him, he was unremarkable, a reliable worker, a man who kept to himself, but beneath the surface, a darkness was taking root. Harvey's first known victim came in 1970, just months into his job at Marymount. A patient, weak and vulnerable, lay in a bed under his care. Harvey later claimed the act was one of mercy, a pillow pressed over the man's face to end his suffering, but the truth was murkier. The act awakened something in him, a sense of control, a godlike power over life and death. He wasn't caught, and the death was ruled natural, a common occurrence in a hospital filled with the elderly and infirm. Emboldened, Harvey began to experiment, his methods growing more sophisticated, his victims more numerous. Over the next 17 years, Harvey worked in hospitals across Ohio and Kentucky, his resume a chilling map of death. At Drake Memorial Hospital in Cincinnati, he refined his techniques, using cyanide, arsenic, and insulin to dispatch his victims. He tampered with IV lines, cut oxygen tubes, and poisoned food, each act cloaked in the chaos of a busy ward. His victims were varied: elderly patients, the terminally ill, even those recovering from routine procedures. To Harvey, they were all the same, opportunities to wield his deadly authority. He later claimed he was easing their pain, sparing them a life of suffering. But his actions told a different story, one of cruelty and calculation. By 1987, Harvey's body count was staggering. Estimates range from 33 to 70, though the true number may never be known. He moved from job to job, his quiet competence masking his crimes. Colleagues noticed nothing amiss. Patients trusted him implicitly. But in the spring of 1987, a single case would unravel his reign of terror. John Powell, a 44-year-old patient at Cincinnati's Daniel Drake Memorial Hospital, died unexpectedly after a motorcycle accident left him comatose. His death seemed unremarkable, but a routine autopsy revealed a shocking truth. Traces of cyanide in his system, a poison that had no place in a hospital bed. The discovery sent shockwaves through the hospital. Cincinnati police launched an investigation, their focus narrowing to the staff who cared for Powell. Harvey, then 35, was a nurse's aide on Powell's ward. His name unremarkable among dozens, but as detectives dug deeper, inconsistencies emerged. Colleagues recalled Harvey's odd behavior, his fascination with death, his habit of lingering in patients' rooms long after his tasks were done. A search of his apartment turned up a chilling arsenal: vials of cyanide, medical texts on toxicology, and a journal detailing his mercy killings. The entries were cold, clinical, as if he were documenting experiments rather than murders. Brought in for questioning, Harvey initially denied everything, his voice steady, his eyes devoid of emotion. But the evidence was overwhelming. Faced with the journal and the cyanide, he began to talk, his confession a chilling descent into the mind of a killer. He admitted to killing Powell, then others, each death described with a detachment that stunned investigators. "I was helping them," he said, his words a twisted justification for his crimes. He spoke of his childhood, the abuse that shaped him, the rage he buried deep, but he offered no remorse, no hint of regret. To Harvey, he was a judge, jury, and executioner, his victims mere pawns in his quest for control. The scope of Harvey's crimes was staggering. He confessed to 33 murders, though investigators suspected the number was closer to 70. His victims included men and women, young and old, their deaths spanning nearly 2 decades. Some were poisoned slowly, their symptoms mimicking natural decline. Others died swiftly, their lives snuffed out in moments. Harvey's methods were as varied as his victims. He used rat poison, suffocation, and even contaminated heparin, each act a testament to his cunning. He targeted not only patients but also acquaintances, poisoning a neighbor's food over a petty dispute and attempting to kill his lover's parents. The investigation uncovered a chilling pattern. Harvey thrived in the trust of the medical system. Hospitals, stretched thin and understaffed, failed to notice the spike in deaths on his shifts. Autopsies were rare, and cyanide, a fast-acting poison, left little trace unless specifically tested for. His colleagues, overworked and unsuspecting, saw him as a diligent worker, not a predator. The system, designed to save lives, had become his hunting ground, its blind spots his greatest ally. Harvey's arrest in 1987 was a reckoning for the medical community. Cincinnati reeled as the news broke. The city's trust in its hospitals shattered. Families of his victims came forward, their grief compounded by the realization that their loved ones had been murdered under the guise of care. The media dubbed him the Angel of Death, a moniker that captured both his role as a caregiver and the horror of his betrayal. Prosecutors faced a daunting task. How do you try a man for dozens of murders, many without bodies or conclusive evidence? The trial, held in 1988, was a grim spectacle. Harvey, clad in a suit, sat impassively as prosecutors presented their case. They called witnesses, nurses who'd worked alongside him, families who'd lost loved ones, toxicologists who explained the science of his poisons. The journal was their strongest weapon, its pages a roadmap of death. Harvey's defense argued insanity, claiming his abusive childhood and warped sense of mercy drove him to kill, but the jury saw through the facade. His crimes were too methodical, too deliberate to be the work of a broken mind. After weeks of testimony, they found him guilty on 37 counts of murder, sentencing him to 8 consecutive life terms, plus 20 years. A punishment that ensured he'd never walk free. For the families, the verdict was a hollow victory. No sentence could undo the loss, no justice could erase the betrayal. Some question how Harvey had gone undetected for so long, their anger turning to the hospitals that failed to protect their loved ones. The case sparked reforms, tighter oversight of medical staff, mandatory autopsies for suspicious deaths, and better tracking of hospital mortality rates. But for those who'd lost parents, siblings, and friends, the changes came too late. Harvey's story didn't end in the courtroom. For nearly 3 decades, he lived behind bars, his life a monotonous cycle of confinement. He gave interviews, his voice eerily calm as he recounted his crimes, still clinging to the narrative of mercy. To psychologists, he was a case study in psychopathy, a man who felt no guilt, no empathy, only a perverse pride in his work. But on March 28, 2017, his story took a final, violent turn. At Toledo Correctional Institution in Ohio, Harvey, then 64, was found beaten in his cell, his body crumpled under the weight of a brutal attack. He died 2 days later, his skull fractured, his brain damaged beyond repair. The attacker was James D. Elliott, a fellow inmate serving 37 years for burglary. In letters to the Toledo Blade, Elliott confessed, his words a mix of defiance and justification. He'd grown up in Kentucky, near families who'd lost loved ones to Harvey's poisons. "I did it for them," he wrote, claiming the attack was retribution, a way to give closure to those Harvey had wronged. In 2019, Elliott was sentenced to life for the murder, his act a grim echo of the vigilante justice that Harvey's crimes had inspired. The prison, meant to contain Harvey's darkness, had become the stage for his final reckoning. As the rain falls outside, its steady patter a somber requiem, Donald Harvey's story lingers like a chill in the air. What drove a man to kill so many? To hide his crimes in the very place meant to heal? Was it the trauma of his youth? The need for control, or a void where a conscience should have been? Psychologists point to his lack of empathy, his ability to compartmentalize his actions as hallmarks of a true psychopath. Yet, Harvey saw himself as a savior, his warped morality a shield against the truth. His crimes exposed the fragility of trust, the cracks in a system that failed to see the monster in its midst. Hospitals, once sanctuaries, became places of fear, their halls haunted by the memory of those who died under Harvey's care. The reforms that followed were a step toward prevention, but they couldn't erase the past. Families were left to mourn, their loved ones reduced to numbers in a killer's ledger. Donald Harvey was no angel, despite his claims. He was a predator, a man who wielded death with the precision of a surgeon in the heart of a void. His story is a warning that evil can wear the face of compassion, that the places we feel safest can harbor the greatest dangers. As we drift into the quiet of the night, the rain carries the weight of his victims' names, each one a life stolen, each one a reminder to question the trust we so freely give. Part 5. The Survival of Jennifer Schuett. In the stillness of a Texas summer night, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of jasmine and the distant hum of crickets fills the silence, a small apartment complex in Dickinson stood, unassuming. It was August 9, 1990, and the town, a quiet speck south of Houston, was the kind of place where neighbors waved and doors were left unlocked. But in the shadows of that warm night, a predator prowled, his eyes fixed on a target no one could have imagined, an 8-year-old girl named Jennifer Schuett. What unfolded would test the limits of human resilience, a story of survival that would echo through decades, proving that even the smallest voice can bring justice to the darkest crimes. Jennifer Schuett was a child full of light. With her wide eyes and infectious giggle, she was the heart of her single mother Elaine's world. The two were inseparable, their bond forged through the challenges of life in a modest apartment. Elaine worked multiple jobs to provide for Jennifer, her days a blur of exhaustion and love. Jennifer, bright and curious, thrived despite their struggles. Her imagination a refuge from the world's hardships. She loved books, her small room a treasure trove of stories, and she dreamed of adventures beyond the confines of Dickinson. But like many children, she harbored a quiet fear of the dark, often crawling into her mother's bed for comfort. On this night, that fear would become a haunting reality. Elaine and Jennifer had gone to bed together, their routine a familiar dance of shared warmth. But around 2:30 a.m., Jennifer's restless tossing, kicking her mother in her sleep, prompted Elaine to make a fateful decision. "Honey, go sleep in your room," she said gently. Knowing she needed rest for an early shift, Jennifer, ever eager to please, replied, "Just because I love you, Mom." I'm going to sleep in my own room tonight. She padded down the hall, her small figure disappearing into the darkness. Elaine would later replay those words endlessly, each syllable a shard of regret. She couldn't have known that a monster was waiting, watching from the parking lot below. At 4 a.m., Jennifer was gone. Elaine woke to an eerie silence, her maternal instincts screaming that something was wrong. She rushed to Jennifer's room, her heart plummeting at the sight. The bed was empty, the window facing the parking lot wide open, its screen pushed aside. Panic seized her as she called 911, her voice trembling with terror. "My daughter's missing," she said, the words barely audible through her sobs. The police arrived swiftly, their flashlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. The open window told a grim story. Someone had entered, taken Jennifer, and vanished into the night. The apartment on the ground floor had been an easy target, its vulnerability a cruel twist of fate. The Dickinson Police Department launched a frantic search, their small force stretched thin. Volunteers combed the town, calling Jennifer's name through fields and wooded lots. Elaine, distraught, clung to hope, her mind racing with images of her daughter's smile. The community rallied, flyers bearing Jennifer's photo, a bright-eyed girl with a shy grin plastered across telephone poles and storefronts. News stations broadcast her story, the image of a missing child tugging at the heartstrings of a nation. But as hours ticked by, hope began to fray. In a town like Dickinson, where crime was rare, the idea of a child abduction felt like a betrayal of everything safe and familiar. At 6:30 p.m. that evening, a miracle emerged from tragedy. A group of children playing in a field 5 kilometers from Jennifer's home stumbled upon a sight that froze them in horror. A small figure, pale and motionless, lying in the tall grass. They ran for help, and police descended on the scene, their hearts pounding. It was Jennifer, alive but barely. Her throat had been slashed from ear to ear, a gaping wound that had bled profusely, leaving her skin ghostly white. Fire ant bites covered her body, a cruel testament to the hours she'd lain exposed. Yet, against all odds, her pulse flickered faintly. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, where doctors fought to save her life, their hands steady despite the grim prognosis. In the emergency room, Jennifer's condition was dire. The wound to her throat had severed her vocal cords, rendering her mute, and she'd lost nearly half her blood. She was so small, so pale, one doctor later recalled, but there was a fight in her eyes. Surgeons worked tirelessly, stabilizing her airway and stopping the bleeding. After hours of uncertainty, they delivered cautious hope. Jennifer would survive, but her recovery would be a long road, one marked by physical scars and a trauma that would shape her life. Elaine, by her side, wept with relief, her guilt a heavy shadow. "I should have kept her with me," she whispered, a refrain that would haunt her for years. As Jennifer lay in her hospital bed, the police turned their focus to finding her attacker. The field where she was found yielded critical clues, tire tracks, a man's shirt and Jennifer's underwear, discarded half a mile away. The items were sent for DNA analysis, a technology still in its infancy in 1990, but the most powerful evidence came from Jennifer herself. Despite her inability to speak, her mind was sharp, her memory vivid. Unable to vocalize, she communicated through notes, her small hands trembling as she wrote answers to detectives' questions. Her fear of men was palpable. She flinched at male doctors, her eyes wide with panic, but she trusted her mother to relay her words. Jennifer's account was astonishingly precise. She described waking to a stranger in a room, his hands lifting her from her bed. He carried her out the window, running down the sidewalk as she tried to scream, only for him to cover her mouth. In his car, he claimed to be an undercover police officer, a lie that confused her young mind. "I wanted to believe him," she later wrote, but something felt wrong. Presumably, he drove her past her grandparents' house, dismissing her pleas to stop, and eventually pulled over near her school, 3 kilometers from home. There, he told her to watch the moon, promising her mother would come when it changed color. The lie was a cruel distraction, a prelude to the violence that followed. In the car, Jennifer's instincts screamed danger. She asked for his badge, his gun, desperate for proof he was a policeman. When he deflected, claiming they were in the back seat, she turned to look, and that's when he attacked. The assault was brutal, her small body no match for his strength. She blacked out, regaining consciousness as he dragged her through a field by her ankles, the ground tearing at her skin. In a moment of desperate cunning, Jennifer played dead, holding her breath as he abandoned her, his car door slamming before he drove away. Alone, she touched her throat, feeling the gaping wound, and realized she couldn't scream. For 12 to 14 hours, she lay in that field, bitten by ants, drifting in and out of consciousness, her will to live a fragile thread. Jennifer's notes provided a name, Dennis. She described him as scruffy with a possible scar on his face, details that guided forensic artist Lois Gibson to create a composite sketch. The image broadcast across Texas was eerily accurate, but no immediate leads emerged. The DNA from the crime scene was preserved, but in 1990, databases were limited, and the case grew cold. Jennifer, meanwhile, began her slow recovery. Her vocal cords, nearly severed, began to heal. Against all odds, a faint sound escaping when she screamed in frustration over a chocolate bar she couldn't eat. Doctors were stunned, calling it a miracle. By the time she left the hospital, she was speaking softly, her voice a testament to her strength. Life after the attack was a battle. Jennifer returned to school, her scars a constant reminder, but she refused to let fear define her. She threw herself into her studies, her intelligence a beacon through the trauma. Elaine moved them to a new home, a small house bought by her parents, hoping for a fresh start. Yet the shadow of the attacker loomed large. He could be anywhere, Jennifer later said. The neighbor, the man at the grocery store. Her fear of men persisted, but she found solace in her dreams, eventually pursuing a career as a children's librarian, her love of stories a bridge to healing. For 19 years, the case remained unsolved, a file gathering dust in the Dickinson Police Department. Detectives came and went, each promising to find Dennis, but leads were scarce. Jennifer, now an adult, never stopped pushing, her determination a quiet fire. She worked with advocates, sharing her story to inspire others, her voice steady despite the pain. In 2008, a new detective, Tim Cromie, took over the case, his resolve matching Jennifer's. He revisited the evidence, focusing on the DNA preserved from 1990. Technology had advanced, and he sent the samples to Quantico, Virginia for analysis, knowing the odds were slim for a case so old. In 2009, a breakthrough came. The DNA matched Dennis Earl Bradford, a 39-year-old welder from North Little Rock, Arkansas. Bradford's DNA was in the national database logged after a 1996 assault on a woman he'd met at a bar. Sentenced to 12 years, he'd served only 4, released in 2000. His criminal history included a DUI arrest near his home, but nothing had linked him to Jennifer's case until now. Cromie and his partner, Richard Renison, dug into Bradford's past, discovering he'd lived in Dickinson in 1987, just 2 miles from Jennifer's apartment. A 1990 driver's license photo sealed it. Bradford's face matched the composite sketch, down to the scar Jennifer had described. On October 19, 2009, Bradford was arrested, his life as a husband and father shattered by the weight of his past. Under interrogation, he confessed, his voice flat as he recounted the abduction and attack. He claimed he'd been overwhelmed by guilt, even attempting suicide shortly after, only to back out. Chillingly, he'd been admitted to the same hospital where Jennifer recovered, their paths crossing in a cruel twist of fate. But Bradford's remorse rang hollow. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he said, words that failed to erase the brutality of his actions. Jennifer, now 27, received the call she'd waited nearly 2 decades for. Her attacker was behind bars, her childhood memory vindicated. She felt relief, but also a new weight. The man who'd haunted her was human, flawed, and now accountable. Bradford's trial was set for 2010, but he never faced a jury. In May 2010, he hanged himself in his cell, robbing Jennifer of the chance to confront him in court. "I wanted him to see me," she later said, "to know I survived." Jennifer's story didn't end with Bradford's death. She became an advocate for survivors, her voice a beacon for those silenced by trauma. She married a man named Jonathan, finding trust after years of fear, and continued her work as a librarian, sharing stories that inspire hope. Her case led to advancements in cold case investigations. Her preserved DNA, a blueprint for justice, delayed but not denied. The Dickinson Police Department honored her, calling her their miracle girl, a title she wore with quiet pride. As the rain falls softly outside, its rhythm a gentle counterpoint to a story of unimaginable strength, Jennifer Schuett's survival lingers like a star in the darkness. What drove Dennis Bradford to target a child, to leave her for dead? Was it a fleeting impulse or a deeper darkness that festered in silence? His confession offered no answers, Only the cold reality of his actions, Jennifer's resilience, her refusal to be defined by her scars, is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure. Her story is a reminder that justice, though slow, can find its way. It's a call to listen to the smallest voices, to believe the stories of those who fight to be heard. In the quiet of Dickinson, where the jasmine still blooms, Jennifer's legacy lives on, a light that no darkness can extinguish. As we drift into the night, the rain carries her courage, a whisper that even in our darkest moments, we can find the strength to survive. Part 6, The Killing Spree of William Reese. In the humid haze of a Texas summer where the Gulf Coast sun beats down on quiet towns and the horizon stretches endlessly, a shadow moved unnoticed. It was 1997, and the communities of League City, Friendswood, and Manville were places where life unfolded slowly. Children rode bikes down suburban streets, families gathered for barbecues, and trust was a given. But beneath this idyllic surface, a predator hunted, his appetite for violence insatiable. His name was William Lewis Reese, and in a single year he would tear apart the lives of 4 young women, leaving a trail of grief and mystery that would take nearly 2 decades to unravel. William Reese was a man who wore the mask of normalcy with chilling precision. Born in 1959 in Oklahoma, he grew up in a working-class family, his childhood unremarkable save for a quiet intensity that unnerved those close to him. By his 20s, he was drifting, his life a patchwork of odd jobs and fleeting relationships. He settled in Texas working as a truck driver, his long hauls giving him freedom and anonymity. To neighbors, he was polite but distant, a man who kept his lawn trimmed and his thoughts to himself. But behind closed doors, Reese harbored a darkness, a predatory urge that found its outlet in the summer of 1997, when 4 women crossed his path and paid the ultimate price. The first to vanish was Tiffany Johnston, a 19-year-old newlywed with a radiant smile and a heart full of dreams. On July 12, 1997, she was last seen leaving a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma, her red Mazda Miata gleaming under the midday sun. Tiffany had married her high school sweetheart Shane just weeks earlier, their future bright with plans for a family. When she didn't return home, Shane called the police, his voice thick with worry. Her car was found abandoned at the car wash, the keys still in the ignition, her purse untouched. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses, just an eerie absence that chilled investigators. Tiffany's body was discovered 2 days later in a field in Yukon, Oklahoma. Her life ended by strangulation, her body bearing the marks of a brutal assault. 3 months earlier, on April 3, 1997, 12-year-old Laura Smither had disappeared from Friendswood, Texas, 300 miles south. Laura, a gifted dancer with a shy smile, had gone for a morning jog near her home, a routine she'd followed countless times. Her mother, Gay, expected her back within the hour, but as the minutes ticked by, dread set in. Laura's sneakers were found discarded on a quiet road, but she was gone. The Smither family, pillars of their close-knit community, rallied volunteers, their hope fading with each passing day. On April 20, Laura's body was found in a retention pond in Pasadena, Texas, 12 miles away. She'd been strangled, her body submerged in shallow water, her dreams of a ballet career silenced forever. In August 1997, 17-year-old Jessica Kane vanished from Lamarck, Texas, just 10 miles from Friendswood. Jessica, a vibrant high school senior with a love for theater, was driving home from a cast party, her TGI Fridays uniform still on from her waitressing shift. Her truck was found abandoned on the shoulder of Interstate 45, its door ajar, her wallet and keys inside. Despite extensive searches, Jessica's body remained missing, her disappearance a gaping wound for her family. Her father, CH, clung to the hope that she was alive, but deep down, he feared the worst. The final victim, Kelly Cox, 20, disappeared on July 15, 1997, from Manville, Texas. Kelly, a student at the University of North Texas, was last seen at a gas station, her car left behind with a flat tire. Known for her kindness and ambition, she was planning a career in education, her future bright with possibility. Her body was found weeks later in a field near Tiki Island, Texas, another victim of strangulation, her life stolen in a moment of unimaginable violence. The similarities between the cases, young women abducted in broad daylight, found strangled, pointed to a single killer, but the police had no name, no face, only a growing sense of dread. The Texas killings, dubbed the I-45 murders, gripped the region with fear. The corridor along Interstate 45, stretching from Houston to Galveston, became a hunting ground. its quiet towns now places of suspicion. Parents kept their daughters close and communities mourned the loss of their brightest stars. The police formed a task force linking the cases through their chilling similarities. All 4 women were young, abducted in public and killed by strangulation, their bodies left in remote areas. Tire tracks and fibers were collected, but DNA evidence was scarce, and the technology of 1997 offered little help. Leads dried up, and the cases grew cold. The killer's identity, a maddening mystery. William Reese was a suspect early on, his name surfacing through tips and his proximity to the crime scenes. He'd lived in Houston in 1997, his truck driving job giving him access to the I-45 corridor. Witnesses recalled seeing a man matching his description, a burly figure with a weathered face, near the car wash where Tiffany vanished. But Reese was slippery, his alibis vague but unchallenged. Questioned in 1998, he denied involvement, his demeanor calm, almost smug. Without concrete evidence, the police let him go, their frustration mounting as he slipped back into the shadows. For 18 years, the families of Tiffany, Laura, Jessica, and Kelly lived in limbo, their grief compounded by the lack of answers. Memorials dotted the I-45 corridor, crosses, flowers, and faded photographs marking the places where their daughters were found or last seen. The Smithers founded the Laura Recovery Center, a nonprofit dedicated to finding missing children. Their pain transformed into purpose. Jessica's father, C.H., never stopped searching, combing fields and riverbanks, his hope a fragile shield against despair. The community held vigils, their prayers a collective plea for justice. The breakthrough came in 2015, driven by advancements in forensic science and a detective's unrelenting resolve. Tim Miller, a private investigator whose own daughter had been murdered along I-45 in 1984, pushed for the cases to be reopened. Working with the FBI's cold case unit, he focused on Tiffany Johnston's murder, the only case with preserved DNA evidence. A semen sample collected in 1997 but too degraded for early testing was reanalyzed using modern techniques. The results were conclusive. The DNA matched William Reese, now 56, living quietly in Houston with a new family. Reese was arrested in June 2015, his life as a grandfather and mechanic upended by the past. Under interrogation, he maintained his innocence, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a flicker of fear. The DNA was irrefutable, linking him to Tiffany's murder beyond doubt. But the police wanted more. They believed he was responsible for Laura, Jessica, and Kelly's deaths, and they needed his confession to close the cases. In a calculated move, prosecutors offered a deal: lead them to Jessica and Kelly's remains, and they'd spare him the death penalty. Reese, facing the weight of the evidence, agreed. In April 2016, Reese led authorities to 2 desolate sites along the I-45 corridor. Near Angleton, Texas, he pointed to a field where Jessica Kane's remains lay hidden, her bones scattered but identifiable through dental records. Days later, in Alvin, Texas, he revealed the location of Kelly Cox's body, preserved in a shallow grave. The discoveries were a bittersweet victory for the families, offering closure but reopening wounds long scarred over. Reese's cooperation came with a chilling confession. He'd stalked each woman, choosing them for their vulnerability, their youth. They were just there, he said, his words a cold dismissal of the lives he stole. The trials were a reckoning. In August 2021, Reese was sentenced to death for Tiffany Johnston's murder, the DNA evidence sealing his fate. The courtroom was heavy with emotion. Shane Johnston, Tiffany's widower, staring at Reese with a mix of rage and sorrow. "You took my future," he said, his voice breaking. In June 2022, Reese received 3 life sentences without parole for the murders of Laura Smither, Jessica Kane, and Kelly Cox, his plea deal sparing him execution but ensuring he die behind bars. The judge's words were a solemn vow: "You will never harm again." For the families, the sentences were a long-delayed justice. The Smithers, who'd turned their pain into advocacy, found solace in knowing Laura's killer was caught. Though Gay admitted it doesn't bring her back. K.H. Kane, Jessica's father, visited her grave, whispering, "We got him, baby." Kelly's mother, Jan, spoke of her daughter's kindness, vowing to keep her memory alive. The communities along I-45 exhaled, their fear replaced by a cautious relief. Though the scars of 1997 remained. Reese's crimes exposed the vulnerability of small-town life, the ease with which a predator could hide in plain sight. His truck, his transient lifestyle, and his unassuming demeanor made him invisible. A ghost moving through the lives he destroyed. Psychologists point to his predatory nature, a mix of sexual compulsion and a need for dominance, as the driving force behind his spree. Yet Reese offered no insight, his confessions devoid of remorse, his motives a locked box. The I-45 corridor, once a place of terror, has begun to heal. The Laura Recovery Center continues its work, saving lives in Laura's name. Memorials for Tiffany, Laura, Jessica, and Kelly stand as quiet sentinels, their stories woven into the fabric of the towns they called home. The advancements in DNA technology that caught Reese have become a beacon for cold cases, a reminder that justice, though delayed, can still be found. As the rain falls softly outside, its cadence a mournful tribute to 4 lives lost, William Reese's killing spree lingers like a storm that refuses to fade. What drove a man to hunt, to kill with such precision and abandon? Was it the thrill of power, the anonymity of the road, or a darkness too deep to name? His silence offers no answers, only the cold reality of his actions. The women he killed, Tiffany, Laura, Jessica, Kelly, were more than victims. They were daughters, sisters, dreamers, their futures stolen by a man who saw them as objects, not lives. Their story is a reminder that evil can wear the face of the ordinary, that safety is a fragile illusion. It's a call to honor the memories of those lost, to fight for those still missing, and to never stop seeking truth. In the quiet of the Texas night, where the Gulf breeze carries the scent of salt and sorrow, their names echo, a chorus of resilience that no darkness can silence. Part 7, The Betrayal of John Sharp. In the golden light of Mornington, Australia, where the beaches stretch endlessly and the scent of eucalyptus lingers in the air, a young family built their dream. It was March 2004, and the quiet coastal town an hour's drive from Melbourne was a haven of surf shops, seaside cafes, and tight-knit neighbors. Anna Kemp, her husband John Sharp, and their toddler daughter Gracie lived in a modest home, their days filled with the simple joys of parenthood. To the outside world, they were a picture of contentment, a family bound by love. But behind closed doors, a darkness festered, a betrayal so profound it would shatter their idyllic life and leave a community reeling in horror. Anna Kemp was a woman who radiated warmth. At 34, she was a devoted mother and a beloved friend, her laughter a melody that brightened any room. Born and raised in Victoria, she'd met John Sharp in her 20s, drawn to his quiet intensity and steady presence. John, a 37-year-old mechanic, was reserved, his emotions tightly guarded, but Anna saw gentleness in him, a partner to share her dreams. They married in 1999, and in 2002, Gracie arrived, a cherubic 20-month-old with her mother's eyes and a giggle that's melted hearts. By 2004, Anna was pregnant again, her joy tempered only by the financial strain of their growing family. John, the sole breadwinner, worked long hours, his stress a silent undercurrent in their home. To neighbors, the Sharps were unremarkable, their life a quiet routine of work, play dates, and beach outings. Anna was the outgoing one, chatting with friends over coffee while John kept to himself, his smiles rare but sincere. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Friends later recalled Anna's subtle hints of unease, moments when she mentioned John's growing distance, his irritability over money. He's under pressure, she'd say, brushing it off with a smile. Anna, ever the optimist, believed love could weather any storm. She couldn't know that the man she trusted most was harboring a resentment that would soon erupt into unthinkable violence. On March 21, 2004, Anna and Gracie vanished. John told police a story that seemed plausible at first. Anna had left him, taking Gracie to stay with a friend after an argument. She said she needed space, he claimed, his voice calm, his eyes avoiding contact. He described her packing a bag, mentioning a vague plan to visit someone interstate. The police, accustomed to domestic disputes, took his statement but pressed for details. Where was this friend? Why hadn't Anna called anyone? John's answers were evasive, his demeanor oddly detached for a man whose wife and child were missing. Red flags began to wave, and what began as a missing persons case quickly turned into something far darker. Anna's family, led by her sister Lisa, refused to believe John's story. Anna was devoted to Gracie, her pregnancy a source of pride. She wouldn't vanish without a word. Lisa contacted Anna's friends, none of whom had heard from her. Her phone was off, her bank accounts untouched. Gracie's absence was even more alarming. The toddler was inseparable from her mother, her routine a sacred rhythm. Anna would never leave Gracie, Lisa told police, her voice trembling with conviction. Something's wrong. You need to look at John. The police, sensing deception, shifted their focus, their suspicions honed. By John's inconsistent timeline, the investigation zeroed in on the Sharp home, a tidy bungalow on a quiet street. A search revealed no signs of a struggle, but small details raised alarms. Anna's favorite necklace, a gift from her mother, lay on her nightstand. She never left home without it. Gracie's beloved stuffed bunny was tucked under her pillow, an item she clung to at bedtime. John claimed Anna had packed lightly, but her suitcase was still in the closet, her toiletries untouched. The police dug deeper, interviewing neighbors who reported hearing raised voices the night before Anna's supposed departure. One recalled seeing John in the backyard late at night, his flashlight bobbing as he worked near the garden shed. John's story began to crumble under scrutiny. He claimed Anna had used her phone to call a friend, but records showed no outgoing calls. Her car, parked in the driveway, had fresh scratches on the bumper, unexplained by John's vague account of a minor scrape. The police obtained CCTV footage from a nearby gas station, capturing John filling a canister with fuel on March 20, hours before he said Anna left. Most damning was a bank transaction. Anna's debit card had been used at a hardware store 2 days earlier, purchasing rope and duct tape. Items John couldn't explain. Each piece of evidence tightened the noose, but John remained defiant, his lies a fragile shield against the truth. On March 27th, a week after Anna and Gracie's disappearance, the police confronted John with the mounting evidence. In a tense interrogation, they presented the CCTV footage, the bank records, and a neighbor's account of seeing him load a heavy bag into his car late at night. John's composure cracked, his hands trembling as he stared at the table. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he whispered, his voice barely audible. What followed was a confession that chilled the room, a tale of rage, desperation, and a betrayal so monstrous it defied comprehension. John admitted to killing Anna and Gracie on March 20 in the quiet of their home. The trigger, he claimed, was an argument over money. Anna, frustrated by their mounting debts, had confronted him about his spending, her words cutting deeper than he could bear. "She said I wasn't providing," he told police, his voice flat. "I just snapped." He grabbed a spear gun from his toolbox, a weapon he'd used for fishing, and shot Anna in the chest, the barbed projectile piercing her heart. She collapsed, her eyes wide with shock, her life extinguished in moments. Gracie, woken by the noise, toddled into the room, her cries piercing the silence. In a moment of unthinkable cruelty, John turned the spear gun on his daughter, killing her instantly. The aftermath was a calculated cover-up. John wrapped their bodies in tarps, his mind racing as he planned his next move. That night, under the cover of darkness, he drove to a landfill in Cranbourne, 20 kilometers away, and dumped Gracie's body among the refuse. Anna's body was harder to conceal. He buried her in the backyard beneath the garden shed, covering the grave with soil and debris. To sell his story, he used Anna's phone to send a text to her sister, mimicking her tone. "Need some time away. Don't worry." He withdrew money from her account, buying time to refine his alibi. For 6 days, he lived in the house where he'd killed his family, his face a mask of normalcy as neighbors offered sympathy. The police, armed with John's confession, searched the landfill, a grueling task that spanned days. On April 2, they found Gracie's tiny body wrapped in plastic, her stuffed bunny still clutched in her arms. Anna's remains were uncovered in the backyard, her pregnancy confirmed by forensic analysis, a boy just weeks from viability. The discoveries shattered Mornington, a town unaccustomed to such horror. Anna's family gathered at the police station, collapsed in grief, their love for her and Gracie a wound that would never heal. Lisa, Anna's sister, spoke for them all. "He took everything from us. How could he?" John's trial began in 2005, a somber affair that gripped Victoria. Prosecutors painted a picture of a man consumed by control, his resentment toward Anna's strength boiling over into violence. The spear gun, they argued, was no impulse weapon. It was deliberate, a tool of precision that spoke to premeditation. John's defense claimed he was overwhelmed, his mental state frayed by financial stress and undiagnosed depression. The jury saw through the excuses. His actions after the murders, the burial, the texts, the lies, showed a mind capable of cold calculation. In June 2005, John Sharp was convicted of 2 counts of murder, sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms with no parole for 33 years until 2027. At 41, he would likely die in prison. His name a stain on Mornington's history. The trial exposed the hidden tensions in the Sharp household, the pressures that simmered beneath their suburban facade. Friends testified to Anna's growing unease, her plans to seek counseling for John's moods. Financial records showed debts piling up, John's pride wounded by Anna's suggestions to cut back. Psychologists pointed to his need for control, his inability to cope with Anna's independence, as the spark for his rage, yet John offered no insight, his silence in court a final act of defiance. Why kill Gracie, a child who adored him? Why destroy the family he built? The answers remained locked in his mind, a void where remorse should have been. Mornington mourned Anna and Gracie with a quiet dignity. A memorial bench was placed on the beach, inscribed with their names, a place where waves whispered their memory. Anna's family established a scholarship in her name, supporting young mothers in need, a tribute to her nurturing spirit. The landfill where Gracie was found became a site of quiet reflection, its grim history softened by flowers left by strangers. The case, one of Victoria's most shocking, sparked discussions about domestic violence, urging communities to see the signs before it's too late. John Sharp's betrayal was a wound that cut deep, a reminder that the greatest dangers can come from those we trust most. Anna and Gracie were the heart of their family, their love a light that no violence could extinguish. Their story exposed the fragility of suburban dreams, the way resentment can fester in silence, erupting in ways no one can predict. The police who worked the case, haunted by years on the job, admitted to sleepless nights, haunted by the image of Gracie's tiny body. "You don't forget a case like this," one detective said. "It changes you." As the rain falls softly outside, its rhythm a somber elegy for a mother and daughter lost, John Sharp's crime lingers like a chill in the bones. What drove a man to destroy the family he swore to protect? Was it pride, fear, or a darkness too deep to name? His confession offered no clarity, only the cold reality of his actions. Anna and Gracie deserved a life of love, of sunlit days by the sea, but they were stolen by a man who saw them as obstacles, not treasures. The story is a call to listen, to see the signs of trouble before they explode into tragedy. It's a reminder that love, though powerful, cannot always shield us from betrayal. In the quiet of Mornington, where the waves still crash and the eucalyptus sways, Anna and Gracie's memory endures, a beacon of light in a world that can turn dark in an instant. As we drift into the night, the rain carries their names, a whisper that even in the face of evil, love remains eternal. Part 8, The Martyrdom of Noor Mukadam. In the heart of Islamabad, Pakistan, where the Margala Hills cast their quiet shadow and the city hums with the rhythm of ambition and tradition, a young woman walked with grace and purpose. It was July 2021, and Noor Mukadam, 27, was a daughter of privilege, her life woven into the fabric of Pakistan's elite. Her smile lit up rooms, her kindness touched hearts, and her dreams reached beyond the confines of her world. But in a gilded cage of wealth and status, a darkness waiting, a man whose obsession would turn love into a weapon, transforming Noor's story into a cry for justice that would echo across a nation. Noor Mukadam was a woman of quiet strength. Born in 1994 to Schuett Mukadam, a former Pakistani diplomat, and Samina Mukadam, a renowned therapist, she grew up in a world of opportunity. Educated in London and Islamabad, Noor was fluent in English and Urdu, her intellect matched by a compassion that drew people to her. She was a dreamer, passionate about travel and art, her Instagram a canvas of vibrant moments, sunsets in Dubai, laughter with friends, glimpses of a life lived fully. At 27, she was carving her own path, exploring a career in event management while navigating the expectations of her conservative society. But her heart, like any young woman's, was vulnerable to love. And in Zahir Jafer, she found a man who promised devotion, until that promise turned to poison. Zahir Jafer was a scion of wealth, the 30-year-old son of a prominent Islamabad businessman. Educated in the U.S., he carried the polish of privilege, his charm masking a volatile core. To the world, he was a successful entrepreneur, his family's real estate empire a testament to their influence. But those who knew him whispered of a darker side, outbursts of rage, a sense of entitlement that bordered on cruelty. Noor met Zahir in 2018, their romance a whirlwind of shared dreams and stolen moments. For 3 years, they danced a delicate balance, their love tested by his controlling nature and her growing unease. By July 2021, Noor had ended the relationship, her decision firm despite Zahir's pleas. She was ready to move on, unaware that his obsession would not let her go. On July 18, 2021, Noor disappeared. Her last known contact was a message to her mother, promising to be home soon. She'd told friends she was meeting Zahir one last time, a chance to return his belongings and close the chapter for good. Her phone went silent, her social media dormant. Schuett Mukadam, sensing something amiss, called the police. His diplomatic instincts sharpened by years of navigating crises. "My daughter is missing," he said, his voice steady but laced with fear. "She was with Zahir Jahir. You need to find her." The Islamabad police, wary of the Jahir family's influence, moved cautiously, but the urgency of a diplomat's plea pushed them into action. The investigation led to Zahir's mansion in Sector F7, an affluent enclave of manicured lawns and guarded gates. On July 20, police arrived, their knocks unanswered until a groundskeeper, trembling, opened the door. Inside, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Noor Mukadam's body lay in a guest room, her head severed, her torso marred by stab wounds. Blood stained the floor, the walls, a grim testament to the violence that had unfolded. Zahir Jaffer sat nearby, his clothes disheveled, his eyes wild but unrepentant. Handcuffs snapped around his wrists as officers processed the scene, their faces pale with shock. Noor, a woman who embodied life, had been reduced to a tragedy. Her final moments a nightmare no one could have foreseen. The police pieced together the timeline through witnesses and evidence. Noor had arrived at Zahir's home on July 18, lured by his promise of a civil farewell. Instead, he locked her in, his rage erupting when she refused to reconcile. For 48 hours, he held her captive, his violence escalating with each passing hour. He beat her, bound her with ropes, and subjected her to a brutal assault. His actions fueled by a toxic mix of rejection and entitlement. On July 20th, Noor fought to escape. He snapped, strangling her before using a knife to end her life in a final act of savagery. The decapitation, prosecutors later argued, was a deliberate attempt to degrade her, to erase the woman who dared to defy him. CCTV footage from the mansion was a chilling witness. It captured Noor's desperate attempt to flee, her figure darting toward the gate, on July 19 only for Zahir to drag her back inside. The groundskeeper, too afraid to intervene, later testified to hearing screams, his silence a choice that would haunt him. A taxi driver hired by Noor to wait outside saw her distress but drove away when Zahir approached, another missed chance to save her. The footage, played in court, was a gut punch. Noor's courage in the face of terror, a stark contrast to Zahir's cruelty. Her phone, recovered from the scene, held messages to friends pleading for help, her words a cry cut short. Zahir's arrest sent shockwaves through Pakistan. The Jaffer family, accustomed to wielding influence, faced a public reckoning, their wealth no shield against the nation's outrage. Noor's status as a diplomat's daughter amplified the case, her face, a radiant smile framed by dark hair, plastered across news channels. Protests erupted in Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore, women marching with signs reading "Justice for Noor," their voices demanding an end to gender-based violence. The case struck a nerve in a country where honor killings and domestic abuse often go unpunished. Noor's murder, a rallying cry for change. The investigation uncovered a web of complicity. Zahir's parents, Zahir and Azmat Jaffer, were arrested for allegedly helping cover up the crime. Phone records showed they'd called Zahir during Noor's captivity, urging him to handle the situation. Their household staff, including the groundskeeper and a cook, faced charges for failing to report the abuse, their silence a betrayal of Noor's pleas. Zahir's defense team, grasping for leniency, claimed he was mentally unstable, citing a history of drug use and erratic behavior, but medical evaluations found no evidence of psychosis, only a man consumed by control and rage. The trial, held in Islamabad's district court, was a spectacle of grief and fury. It began in October 2021, the courtroom packed with journalists, activists, and Noor's family. Schuett and Maria Mukadam sat in stoic silence, their pain etched in every line of their faces. Prosecutors presented a meticulous case, the CCTV footage, Noor's blood on Zahir's clothes, DNA evidence linking him to the knife. Witnesses, including the taxi driver and Noor's friends, painted a picture of a woman trapped by a man who refused to let go. Zahir, defiant, claimed Noor's death was an accident, a moment of passion gone wrong. His words sparked outrage, the judge silencing the courtroom as murmurs of disgust rippled through. The most damning testimony came from Noor's phone. Her final messages, sent to a friend, read, "He's going to kill me, please help." The words read aloud hung heavy in the air, a testament to her fear and her fight. Forensic experts detailed the brutality of the attack. Over 20 stab wounds, a fractured skull, and the decapitation, performed with a precision that spoke to intent. The knife, a Swiss Army model, was found in Zahir's room, its blade still slick with Noor's blood. The evidence was overwhelming, each piece a brick in the wall of justice. On February 24, 2022, the verdict came. Zahir Jeffer was sentenced to death twice for rape and murder, his execution to be carried out by hanging. The judge's words were a vow. "You have shown no remorse, no humanity." Zahir and Asma Jeffer received 10 years each for abetting the crime, their wealth and status no defense. The household staff faced lesser sentences, their complicity a secondary but significant betrayal. Noor's family, though relieved, found no solace in the ruling. "She's gone," Samina said, her voice breaking. "No sentence can bring her back." The aftermath of Noor's murder was a turning point for Pakistan. Her case galvanized activists, leading to stronger laws against domestic violence and femicide. The Noor Mukadam ordinance, proposed in 2022, aimed to fast-track cases of gender-based violence, ensuring swifter justice. Protests continued, women demanding safety in a society where patriarchy often shields perpetrators. Noor's friends launched a foundation in her name, funding shelters for abused women, a tribute to her compassion. Her Instagram, left untouched, became a digital memorial. Her photos a reminder of the life she lived. Zahir Jaffer's death sentence remains under appeal, his execution delayed by Pakistan's complex legal system. He sits in Adiala jail, his fate uncertain but his guilt undeniable. Psychologists point to his entitlement, his inability to accept rejection as the fuel for his violence. Noor's defiance, her choice to leave him, challenged his control, igniting a rage that consumed them both. Yet Zahir offered no insight, his silence in court a final act of cowardice. Why take Noor's life so brutally? Why degrade her even in death? The answers lie buried in his heart, a void where empathy should have been. Islamabad, with its hills and bustling streets, carries Noor's memory like a quiet prayer. Her family, forever changed, honors her through acts of kindness, their love for her a light that endures. The mansion in Sector F7, once a symbol of wealth, stands empty, its walls stained by the horror they witnessed. Noor's story exposed the fragility of privilege, the way love can curdle into obsession, and the strength of a woman who fought until her final breath. As the rain falls softly outside, its rhythm a mournful hymn for a life cut short, Noor Mukadam's story lingers like a flame in the darkness. What drove Zahir Jaffer to such savagery? Was it the weight of rejection, the arrogance of power, or a darkness too deep to name? His actions offer no answers, only the stark reality of a woman's life stolen. Noor was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, a dreamer whose courage inspired a nation to rise. Her story is a call to action, a reminder that silence in the face of violence is complicity. It's a plea to protect those who dare to love, to live, to defy. In the quiet of Islamabad, where the hills stand sentinel, Noor's legacy burns bright, a beacon of justice, a cry that will not be silenced. As we drift into the night, the rain carries her name, a whisper that even in the face of evil, a single voice can change the world. Part 9, The Poisonous Rain of Lisa Maria Caisa. In the sun-drenched streets of Ecuador's coastal province of Manabí, where the Pacific breeze carries the scent of salt and the rhythm of daily life hums with resilience, a woman moved through her community like a quiet storm. It was 2020, and Lisa Maria Caisa, 26, was a mother, a wife, a neighbor, her life seemingly woven into the fabric of her small town. But beneath her unassuming exterior lay a darkness so profound it would unravel families, shatter trust, and earn her a chilling moniker, Doña Veneno, the Lady of Poison. In a single year, Lisa's deadly hand would claim lives, leaving a trail of suspicion and sorrow that would mark her as one of Ecuador's most notorious killers. Lisa Maria Caisa was a paradox, a woman whose outward normalcy masked a fractured soul. Born in 1994 in a rural Manabi village, her childhood was a crucible of hardship. Raised in a home marred by violence and neglect, Lisa learned early to bury her pain, her emotions locked behind a stoic facade. By her teens, she was rebellious, her defiance a shield against a world that had shown her little kindness. At 18, she married David, a local fisherman, and bore 2 children, a daughter 9 and a son 5, hoping family life would anchor her. But the scars of her past festered, her mind a labyrinth of resentment and desperation. To neighbors, she was reserved but polite, her smile a fleeting mask. To those who knew her best, she was a ticking bomb, her anger simmering just below the surface. Lisa's descent into murder began in early 2020, a year when Ecuador grappled with economic strain and the early waves of a global pandemic. The Caisa household was under pressure. David's fishing hauls were meager, and Lisa's part-time work as a seamstress barely covered their debts. Friends noticed her growing irritability, her complaints about David's uselessness laced with venom. But no one suspected the depths to which she would sink. Her weapon of choice was poison, a silent killer that allowed her to strike without confrontation, her victims unaware until it was too late. In a society where domestic disputes were often overlooked, Lisa found the perfect cover for her crimes, her quiet demeanor a shield against suspicion. The first victims were her own children. In March 2020, Lisa's daughter 9 and son 5 fell ill, their symptoms chillingly similar: vomiting, seizures, and a rapid decline. Neighbors concerned urged Lisa to seek help, but she dismissed their worries, claiming it was a stomach bug. Within days, both children were dead, their small bodies laid out in the local morgue. Community mourned, attributing the tragedy to illness, a common peril in a region with limited health care. Lisa played the grieving mother, her tears convincing, her sorrow a performance that masked a horrifying truth. Autopsies were rare in Manabi, and the deaths were ruled natural, the children buried without question. But Lisa's reign of poison didn't stop there. In June 2020, Yaimi Yunguano, a 30-year-old neighbor and occasional lover, began to sicken. Jamie, a construction worker with a warm laugh, had been close to Lisa, their affair a poorly kept secret in their tight-knit town. His symptoms mirrored those of Lisa's children: nausea, convulsions, and a swift collapse. He died within a week, his family devastated, their suspicions stirred by whispers of Lisa's involvement. Jamie's brother Carlos noticed Lisa's odd behavior at the funeral, her eyes dry, her demeanor detached. She didn't cry, he later told police. She just stood there like it meant nothing. Okay? The community began to talk, their unease growing with each unexplained death. Lisa's husband David fell ill in July, his strength sapped by bouts of vomiting and dizziness. Unlike the others, he survived, his recovery slow but steady. He later recalled Lisa's insistence on preparing his meals, her attentiveness laced with something unsettling. The family's maid Maria also sickened, her symptoms eerily familiar, though she too recovered. By August, rumors swirled Lisa was poisoning those around her, her motives a mystery wrapped in fear. The town, once a place of trust, became a web of suspicion, neighbors eyeing Lisa with a mix of dread and disbelief. The turning point came in September 2020, when Carlos Yunguano, unwilling to let his brother's death go unanswered, contacted the Manabi police. He pointed to Lisa, citing her connection to Jamie and the strange pattern of illnesses in her orbit. The police, initially skeptical, launched an investigation, their resources strained by the pandemic. They interviewed David, who admitted to suspicions about Lisa's cooking, though fear of her temper kept him silent. Maria the maid was more forthcoming, describing Lisa's obsession with a locked box in the kitchen, its contents unknown but guarded fiercely. The police obtained a warrant, their search of the Caisa home yielding a chilling discovery: vials of carbamazepine, an anti-seizure drug, and a pesticide containing organophosphates, both lethal in high doses. The evidence pointed to a methodical killer. Forensic analysis confirmed the presence of carbamazepine in the children's exhumed bodies, a drug Lisa had access to through a relative's prescription. Jamie's remains tested positive for organophosphates, the pesticide a silent assassin in his system. The police theorized Lisa had laced food and drinks her knowledge of her victims' routines allowing her to strike with precision. David and Maria's survival was likely due to lower doses. Their illnesses, a warning Lisa ignored. The locked box, now in evidence, contained handwritten notes, recipes, dosages, a grim ledger of her experiments. Lisa was arrested on October 15, 2020, her composure cracking as police led her away. In interrogation, she was defiant, denying the murders but offering conflicting stories. She claimed the children's deaths were accidental, the result of tainted water, and insisted Jamie's illness was unrelated. But when confronted with the forensic evidence, her facade crumbled. "They deserved it," she whispered, her voice cold, her motives a tangled web of greed and vengeance. She admitted to killing her children for insurance money, a small policy she'd taken out months earlier. Jamie, she said, had threatened to expose their affair, his death a preemptive strike. David and Maria were targeted to silence their suspicions, though Lisa stopped short of confessing to other rumored victims. The investigation widened, uncovering a disturbing pattern. Lisa was linked to the deaths of Marcus Scanto and Jose Luis Arazo, two men who died in 2019 under similar circumstances. Both poisoned, both tied to Lisa through loans or disputes. Though evidence was inconclusive, their cases remained open, their families convinced of her guilt. Rumors swirled of other victims, neighbors, relatives, anyone who crossed her path. But proof was scarce. The police estimated her body count at 3 confirmed deaths, with up to 5 more suspected, a toll that marked her as one of Ecuador's rare female serial killers. Lisa's trial, held in 2021, was a media frenzy in Ecuador. The courtroom in Portobello was packed, the nation gripped by the story of Doña Beñón. Prosecutors presented a chilling case, the forensic evidence, Lisa's notes, and testimony from David and Maria, who faced their former tormentor with trembling resolve. The children's autopsies were the heart of the prosecution, their small bodies a silent accusation. Lisa's defense argued diminished capacity, citing her abusive childhood and mental instability, but psychologists found no evidence of psychosis, only a calculating mind driven by self-interest. Her lack of remorse stunned the court, her gaze fixed on the wall as families wept. In December 2021, Lisa Maria Caisa was convicted on multiple counts. She received 34 years and 8 months for the murders of her children, the maximum sentence under Ecuadorian law, and 22 years for Jaime's death to be served concurrently. She was ordered to pay restitution to the victims' families, a symbolic gesture in a region where poverty lingers. The judge's words were a condemnation. You betrayed the trust of those who loved you, turning nurturing into destruction. Lisa, impassive, offered no response, her silence a final act of defiance. The Scanto and Arazo cases, lacking sufficient evidence, remain under investigation, their resolution a distant hope. The aftermath of Lisa's crimes left Manabi scarred. The town, once a place of communal warmth, grappled with betrayal, neighbors questioning who they could trust. David, now raising his surviving relatives alone, moved away, his faith in humanity shaken. Jamie's family erected a small shrine, his memory a light in their grief. The children's graves, adorned with flowers, became a pilgrimage site for locals, their loss a wound that time could not heal. Lisa's story sparked debates about mental health and domestic oversight in Ecuador, where resources for abuse survivors are scarce. Her nickname, Doña Veneno, became a cautionary tale whispered in markets and homes. Psychologists point to Lisa's childhood trauma as a catalyst, her need for control, response to a life of powerlessness. Yet her crimes were not impulsive, they were planned, deliberate, a chilling inversion of the maternal role. Why target her own children, the embodiment of her future? Why poison Jamie, a man who cared for her? The answers lie in her fractured psyche, a place where greed, fear, and rage. Lisa's silence in court offered no clarity, only the stark reality of lives destroyed by her hand. Manabí, with its sunlit streets and resilient spirit, carries the weight of Lisa's crimes like a quiet burden. The community has begun to heal, their faith restored through acts of kindness and remembrance. But the memory of Doña Veneno lingers, a reminder that evil can hide in the most familiar faces, that poison can flow from those closest to us. Lisa's story is a call to vigilance, a plea to see the signs of darkness before they consume. In the quiet of the Pacific night, where the waves whisper secrets. Her victims' names endure, a testament to lives lost, and a warning to never ignore the shadows within. As the rain weaves its gentle lullaby, the stories of Volume 19 fade into the night, each a haunting echo of human frailty and resilience. From Kelsey Smith's stolen light to Maria Caisa's poisonous betrayal, these tales reveal the thin veil between trust and treachery, the places where evil hides in plain sight. They are not just crimes, but mirrors, reflecting the courage of survivors like Jennifer Schuett, the grief of families like Noor Mukadam's, and the relentless pursuit of justice that binds us. The rain carries their names: Kelsey, Irene, Sarai; Donald's victims: Jennifer, Tiffany, Laura, Jessica; Kelly, Anna, Gracie, Noor, and Lisa's children. A chorus of lives touched by darkness, but never defined by it. As you drift towards sleep, let these stories linger, not as nightmares, but as reminders to hold love close, to question the ordinary, and to honor those who fight on. The shadows of the past are vast, but so is the human spirit. Rest now under the rain's embrace and carry their light into the quiet of tomorrow. Until we meet again, this is Shadows of the Past, bidding you a peaceful night.